Hi everybody, this is November 1st, 2025, and this is part of my video journal of my recovery from watching my little brother, Paul Kierans, 64 with Down syndrome, be locked up in his group home by his British Columbia New Democratic Party government with David Eby as the leader and Sheila Malcolmson as the minister responsible. So I visited with Paul. I remember when he was brought home from the hospital in 1958, and we visited at will, and he stayed with me at my apartment about one weekend a month throughout for the last, for the 32 years before he passed away. But I reported the group home to the Burnaby RCMP on August 26th of 2022. And within 3 days, the group home's lawyer sent my sister. So what I discovered was that in secret, the group home, and that is this new Democratic Party government, British Columbia New Democratic Party government, had created a secret power of attorney over my brother to give him the COVID-19 shot. They did that on February 1st of 2021, but I didn't find out for a year. And when the Public Guardian and Trustee of British Columbia, that's the agency that's responsible for incapable adults, when they refused to investigate this, what I allege to be a fraudulent forged power of attorney, on August 25th of 2022, I went to the Burnaby RCMP and I complained. I said, I brought a copy of this, what I allege to be a fraudulent forged power of attorney. And the constable that I spoke to, Ashley Kumar, said that she was going to look into it and she'd get back to me. But what she didn't investigate at all. What she did was she went to the group home and tipped them off that I complained. So after 32 years of our visiting at will, and me being the last surviving family member in Greater Vancouver to visit Paul, they terminated permanently. Their lawyer wrote me and said, "You will never see your brother again." Can you imagine how the depth of that evil depravity? So I fought through the courts in every possible way that I could, as I'm disabled myself. I was a lawyer, but I was disabled in an accident in 2008. But I fought through the courts twice to the Court of Appeal of British Columbia, and I was not able to reinstate our visits. They were, I believe that they were afraid that I would have Paul tested and show that he was not capable. He didn't have the mental capacity to appoint a substitute decision maker. And it was also, I could get a copy of his authentic signature. I spent about a year as a little girl teaching Paul to print the only word that he could ever print or read, his first name, Paul, so I could see that it was a forgery. It was, it had some mistakes in it, but it was, whereas Paul, when he printed his name, it was always wrong, with like backwards, upside down letters in the wrong order, duplicates. But when on this so-called power of attorney, it was the best signature ever that I'd ever seen him. It was very accurate, and I believe that they forged it so that it would make him look like he was had the intellectual capacity to actually be able to appoint a substitute decision maker. So I was allowed. Eventually, the lawyer for the group home relented, and she said I could have a 10-minute telephone call with Paul once a week, which I did. He begged for me to visit him. He told me over and over again that he loved me and he missed me. He couldn't understand why we were being separated. He offered to vacuum for me. He offered to work for me. It was the most heartbreaking thing. And I have recorded all of those telephone calls, so I have them all. So I appealed the decision cutting off our visits, then I appealed the decision appointing the group home appointed my 82-year-old Catholic nun sister 4,000 kilometers away in Ontario. For the first time in history, somebody outside of British Columbia was appointed a guardian over an incapable adult in British Columbia. That's never happened before. I appealed that decision, and 26 days after my appeal was dismissed, Paul was dead. So what happened was my last telephone call with Paul was April 12th of 2024. And the next, or 2 days later, I got an email from my sister's lawyer, Casey Deanshaw, saying that Paul had had a stroke and he was in Burnaby General. What I've since found out is that Paul laid alone in Burnaby General for 2 days. He actually had the stroke on April 13th, Saturday, April 13th, 2024. And they were waiting to see if he would die before they told me. But once they could see that he wasn't going to die, the evil nun flew in from Ontario, and they allowed me a 10-minute visit with him once a day. On April 21st, I got a phone call from the Burnaby RCMP from the staff sergeant there, saying he had been ordered by Ottawa. The oversight agency of the RCMP had ordered them to reopen the investigation into what I alleged to be the fraudulent forged power of attorney. So about 6:30, when I was sitting in the hospital, I would just sit in the hallway in the hospital, waiting for 10 to 12 hours a day, waiting to visit Paul for the 10-minute visit. And when at about 6:30 on a Sunday, April 21st, I got a call from the Burnaby RCMP saying they'd been ordered to reopen the investigation. And I thought, oh my God, what a breakthrough. Finally, somebody's paying attention. My poor brother is being locked up against his will. He's being confined and isolated against his will. And the next morning I went before a judge and I asked that my sister's guardianship be suspended, because I knew she was going to kill him if she knew that I knew she was being investigated. That he seemed to be recovering from this head injury. He had a wound on the side of his head about an inch long, but I knew that if she knew, she knew that I knew that she was being investigated by the RCMP, and I actually thought they would investigate, which of course they never did, that she would withdraw all medical supports for him. He was on a ventilator, but he gripped my hand. When I said, Paul, it's Kathleen, he squeezed my hand so tightly. And he sat up and he grabbed a book from my hand and turned the pages perfectly. He appeared to be recovering, and people don't die from strokes anymore. If they're treated quickly enough, they generally don't die. But I knew if she found out that I had been informed by the RCMP that she was being investigated, all medical supports would be withdrawn and he would be sedated to death. And that's what happened. So within 24 hours of her finding out that I had been contacted by the Burnaby RCMP about the investigation, Paul was dead. I was never informed. If there was ever a funeral, I was never told. So she told me that he died at 10:15 a.m. on April 23rd. So I have appealed the dismissal of, sorry, and after that, the most important thing in this saga is that once my sister found out, Casey Deanshaw found out that my sister was being investigated by the RCMP, or her power of attorney was being investigated by the RCMP, they applied to have me declared a vexatious litigant and take away all my rights as a normal citizen, my access to the courts of British Columbia. And I have had practiced law without a problem from 1991 until 2014. till 2014, June of 2014. So they applied to the court to take away my rights as a citizen to have access to the courts. And I have to apply to a judge to even respond to, so you can sue me and I can't respond without the permission of a judge. And even though I had letters from my family doctor and my treating, I had a heart attack in 2016. So I had a letter to the judge. I came prepared for this hearing on whether I should have all my rights to have access to the courts removed. So that was the reason they did that, was to discredit me as a witness in this investigation of the fraudulent and forged power of attorney. And it worked, because I've never been interviewed about it. So it was agreed that, because of my doctors have written letters, medical certificates saying that I can't appear in court for longer than 2 hours. But they set this hearing down to have me declared a vexatious litigant for 5 mornings. But they went over the 2 hours. And I got up and I said to the judge, I'm not allowed to stay longer than 2 hours by doctor's orders. And she said, oh, can't you just sit in the gallery? So she's considering a motion to take away all my rights after my brother has died, to take away my rights and my access to the courts. But she wants me to sit in the gallery and put my life at risk. My cardiologist said I have a potentially life-threatening cardiac condition. That's why I try and walk 10,000 steps a day, which is what I'm doing right now. That's why I've got all my VisiVest on and all my gear on to do my 10,000 steps. So the judge went ahead for 2.5 hours on that day, and then for 2 full days thereafter. And then she declared me a vexatious litigant, taking away my access to the courts without judicial oversight. And I've applied for permission to appeal that decision to the Supreme Court of Canada. And all of the documents were filed by September 3rd, this past September 3rd, 2025. I still haven't heard back from the Supreme Court of Canada. So the way you can help is by phoning the Supreme Court of Canada registry and asking for a status update on my application for permission to appeal my designation. I mean, I've spent many decades of my life fighting for vulnerable people, usually single mothers, as a family lawyer. And now I've had my access to the courts, the normal access that any citizen would have, taken away by the evil nun and her lawyers. I estimate the Catholic Church, of which I'm a member, has spent $1.5 million or more. The last time I sort of made a rough estimate, it was that she had the evil nun in Ontario had 2 law firms working for her, an Ontario law firm and a big international British Columbia law firm with Casey Dean Shaw. Her lawyers was Casey Dean Shaw. So that's where things stand right now. I'm just waiting, I'm kind of in suspended animation, waiting to hear back from the Supreme Court of Canada. So if you'd like to help, I'd really appreciate if you would just give the Media Inquiries office at the Supreme Court of Canada at their registry a call and just ask them what's the status of my application for leave to appeal my designation as a vexatious litigant. So that's it for now. I love you all. Take care, everybody.